So this is actually a problem. You could almost say that it's, it's because Figma doesn't give you the tools off the shelf that we would want for this particular use case, the use case being annotation tools. So essentially, you have a problem where your developers need to get certain information from you that you don't particularly want to put on the design file itself. You don't want to put it in the frame because developers could just, go and code it by accident. And you don't want to put it in comments because comments are sort of these awfully ethereal things that might move with your frame and might not, and can be easily sort of. So if I type in a comment here, I can very easily, someone can just resolve it, and then it just goes into the very hidden sort of like, oh, I need to see all the hidden comments and everything. So it's not the best way of annotating. So when we say, here's Jamie said, make it pop. So that's, it's okay to do annotation like that, but the person experience that Jamie and I have had is we work at different companies. I work for Sonolek, he works for some local. The experience we've had is it's much better to have your own annotation object. So the only annotation that is provided by Figma is when it comes to styling. So if you have colors, yes. So if you have colors or text that has been given a name, so for instance, Friends of Figma has their own like color palette thing. If you go to the style definition for that, which is in a different file in this case, you can go in and you can write a description of what it's for. Why would we make such a thing? Same for type. So you can, I have a thing here called GIF-normal. Just maybe not a great name for a text style, but then I can say, this is for the free resources page, and that's cool. And then if I go to the free resources page on the 13th of September, these are the free resources that we had at the end of that day. You can go into the text here, and if it was GIF normal, then it would tell you in the inspect tool, which is what the developers would be working on. It would tell you it is GIF normal, but it doesn't actually tell you what the annotation is, which is a bit weird.
Yeah.
So it's not great, right? In terms of if you're doing an app or a website, the vast majority of the time you're going to want to talk about things like animations, and the animations in Figma are okay, but they're not amazing. You can't do anything close to what you can do in After Effects. So yeah, we do want to try and just talk about those things with our developers in a way that it makes things a bit easier, a bit more permanent. So Jamie has found a couple of things which I thought were really interesting. So Jamie, I don't know if you want to take over, or should I just follow you?
Just follow me. I mean, everyone's I'm guessing everyone's on this file, so just follow me down to. We can skip the little doggy page for now and come down to a few kits that I have featured here. So I've just taken a few snippets out of these kits. The links to the original kits are in a link in this little box in the corner. So there are like literally hundreds of these kits on the Figma community page. So if you're not familiar, you can go onto Figma's community page and you can access a bunch of pre-made libraries of all different kinds, and they all usually strike a different angle. So some of them are very general annotation kits where you have like pins with numbers and arrows, and you have the likes of being able to categorize them as a list or have maybe comments and little boxes. So This example is more of a list here, so it's for creating sort of lists of elements. So, for example, if I bring it down to this example below, we can have something like we can have a pin that's maybe pointing to this, and already in this case, this specific color may not suit this page. The thing is, you can always pull the library and change it to your needs. So in this case, I would maybe unlink that primary color and set it to something more contrasting. Maybe like a white. This is such a bright color. And then on the side, you could say this is like the hero tagline or whatever. And in this, you can have like, this has configurations for 1, 2, 3, 4 inputs. If you click the component, you can probably see yourself. A lot of these kits have their own configurations to try and like minimize the amount of pieces you use. So in this case, like the pins have directions, so you can have it vertical, left, right, up, down. So it's this is one example. There's a few other examples. So beside that, if you move back up to the boxes, you can see there's one specifically for accessibility annotations. So there might be cases where you need to have, for example, you want to define what is the description of an image that appears, the alt description. This is specifically for just being able to link, to these things on a screen. And typically what you do is, again, I'll pull an instance of this and maybe bring it down on this screen to the dog. And I might want the alt to say picture of dog. And the whole purpose of this is I'm instructing and communicating to the person I'm working with who might be implementing this. This is what I need specifically at different points. There might be an input where I need them to understand that the ID for that input has to be a certain name for it to automatically populate details. Like it could be a number or a name. They're kind of things that are nice to have as an overlay over an existing page. Again, there's a few more examples I found when I was looking around. Oops, I forgot to rename that box. This is always the way when I'm preparing these things. I will find the name of this kit, but it's another annotation kit. And again, this one kind of focuses more on comments. So there's ideas, questions, action points. So when you want to have like specific kind of calls to certain things on a page when you're building it and having a discussion with developers or perhaps other stakeholders, this gives you an opportunity to basically, for example, note, update image, and possibly link. That's what I get always for copying and pasting things. I'm terrible. Again, these are just nice pre-built things. They don't always have to be comment-based annotations either. So for example, I found one just past this called red lines. This is specifically for pulling like measurements for things. So
this is magic. I love this. I've used this previously.
Yeah, like these are, you can use, like red lines are a part of Figma's inspect tool. So if you are like, for example, clicked on an element and you hold the Option or Alt key, you can see a temporary red line. But often developers want to see some key red lines persistently so they can understand the structure of the page. So these components are designed to stretch. So for example, the width of this box is 1158. So all I have to do is go in there, write 1158. There's blue values for maybe something like padding or something when you need to contrast with another description. There are tons of these kits. I'm just pulling kind of a few as examples of like goals people are trying to achieve with these kits. Really, the most important thing with any annotation tool is that usually that annotation kit is trying to convey a specific set of messages. So for red lines, it's all about measurements. And I think you've actually got the plugin version of something similar on your screen, right?
Yeah, because I was looking for the one called red lines, which used to be around, but the last time I saw that was a couple years ago. But this is one called measure, which is the only thing that pops up if you search at the top here for plugins. You search for red lines, it comes up.
That's that little button with the three squares and the plus or Shift I.
Yes, Shift I. Yes, I haven't memorized that one. Shift I for
No way,
resources.
really.
Yeah,
I
no, I
think
don't
that's
use it.
my most used shortcut.
Honestly, most of my time nowadays is seems to be about copy, like rewriting things and writing strongly worded emails. So I'm not in the weeds like you are with this stuff. Run loss plugin. Okay, so if I run this again, I can also do the space between this object and the next object. So I guess I need two selected, and then I
Yes.
can have the space between. No,
Or that is that padding?
that might be padding.
I think
I
it's padding.
I don't know if it does. Does it do space between?
Almost certainly. Try press one of the regular measurements outside the little cube. In a little more in one layer. Try
This
that one.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that doesn't work. Oh, maybe it's like internal measurements from here. So the in yeah.
Oh,
So
there you
the,
go.
the
Yes.
sort of inset size.
Hmm.
And then this I imagine is your corner. Oh, it's both. Okay, that's great. And I'd like
Yeah.
those as well. That's very cool. And then I imagine this one gives you just a oh, that's lovely. That's very cool.
Yes. So it's essentially an annotation kit in a plugin,
Yeah.
which I see a lot of as well. Like I often use one for typography and colors when I need to just quickly annotate the spec, and I don't want to have to like spend a lot of time doing it. Plugins are kind of the next level up. Like if you're lucky enough to find the plugin that does what you need, it often automates a lot of these tasks. And yeah, it just overall it just gives you so much more flexibility than just a bunch of little comment bubbles. Because really, I think the more I've used the comment bubbles, the more I found that the comment bubbles are very useful for externals or people who are viewing the file and want to leave their own feedback. When you're actually doing collaboration with a partner, when you need to like actively communicate specs, I think yeah, you really have to start looking at either pre-existing kits if they match what you need. They sometimes do, they sometimes don't. You can always build on a kit by getting a copy of the library and publishing it to your own library, and you can do whatever you want with it then. But also you can build your own kit, which is something that I think Mitch has a few words to say about, and a really cool example if you happen to have it.
Yes, yes. Let me stop sharing my screen and then go get it and then come back
Yeah,
very quickly.
because I was talking with Mitch yesterday, because we were or was it yesterday or the day before? I can't remember. We were jamming out like how we do a talk like this. And then Mitch out of nowhere just pulls out this like really nice annotation component that he built himself.
Well, I think the one I think you probably setting the bar too high there, man.
Oh,
So what I have as an annotation thing is basically just like a permanent version of a sticky note. And I'll bring one over. And so when you're talking about the sort of red lines thing, I I don't know if that's necessarily something that every project needs.
yeah,
I've been working very hard to get my developers to do that work themselves, because as soon as you start putting in annotations for things like sizes, you're creating overhead for yourself, and then you get into a situation where you have UX debt, especially if you've got 10 developers and one designer and you can't keep up with those 10 developers. So it's depending on the project, it might not work for you. So it's not necessarily something you always have to do. The only thing that I have done is I've built out a component which I can share with you, which is basically just a little notes thing. So basically, on the right hand side here, I've got what type of note it is, and it's different colors. So my PM is called Martin, and he's usually the one. So if he comes in and says, "No, this is the way we're going to do things," and that's sort of the way it is because of some kind of standard or whatever, that's a decision there. If it's a priority item, then it will be changed to do. And the way that I've essentially set this up is just as a component set. So I can swap these out with just this little switch. And then I can also go in and change this arrow to say it's actually going to be pointing up and to the right, or just up, or up and to the left, or whatever I want it to be. So the only little trick of this particular component is it has a little arrow that changes depending on where you're looking. So if I need it to be on the left of the thing, I can go look that way. But you could do a lot more. I remember that one that you were showing the other day, yesterday, Jamie, when we were talking about, what were we talking about? We were talking about...
was it the Booleans?
Yes. Yeah. The one with like 20 different... It was like a massive spreadsheet of all the possible...
Oh, let me pull it in. Yeah. Didn't happen to be this, was it?
Yes. Yeah. So this is a much more advanced version of what I've just shown you, where it has sections, and how many sections would you like, which is just crazy. So
I use this like as my sort of go-to. Like, for better or worse, I'm just so used to it now that it's sort of permanently in my recents when I pull up components. And I've actually tweaked this one. So this one is slightly tweaked, I think. Yes, so my version of it uses this teal color as the default. So I think the original kept using like a color I didn't like. So I just made this my default color because this just happened to work. So yeah, this one gives you kind of it's deceptively complex. Like, it seems simple when I pull an instance, but there's a lot of different variants depending on what you want. And also that set comes with some pretty unique components. So this is a really huge one. Whoops. So this is like their floor plan. Now, I don't really use this component myself, but essentially, and I'll just give it a little stroke so you can kind of see what's going on here. This gives you sort of a big component where you can put in a few screens or put in some details. So the idea is, if you wish to do that, you can have links up here to maybe like a Jira ticket if you're working with developers, or a reference to maybe an icon library that people need. And there's all sorts of like variants of components then that it offers based on the annotations above it. So there's like plain little like text component here, and that's also like configurable. So you can have like highlight blocks, you can have position change, you can have the message alignment change. Now this just works for me. It may not be the perfect component, but I'm so comfortable with it that I generally just use this for everything. And I think that's the idea as well. You find something that works for you and can communicate what you need. And if it doesn't work for you, or something doesn't work, but it's almost perfect, you can tweak it, you can play with it. And I think like Mitch's own component is a perfect example of like something that's specifically adapted for what he needs. And I love the touch with having the stakeholder name on each variant of action, or kind of each job. Like, I think that's just like, it's really specialized, but also it saves you a lot of time about having to like not copy and paste it over and over again. And then of course, if someone new comes along, you can just change that name at the source.
Exactly. And I mean, it does create a bit of a problem where it's like, well, maybe you want historic versions, and would I need a second one? And yeah, I mean, everything has sort of pros and cons, right? But so I guess for our main activity, we were kind of thinking that it would be interesting if we were to make our own thing based on requirements, based on the requirements that we had. So I think you're okay, Jamie. You've got all your examples out, right? So I can move on to
yeah. These are all here for people to see. Yes.
So I think what we'll probably do is, do you want to do, Jamie, do you want to do everyone in one group, or do you want to do a split away and then come back? How do you want to do this?
I mean, I think everyone should, including us, should have a go at doing something or building something from scratch. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, should we do one together, or should we do like I go off with Renan and you go off with Megan, and then we come back
What
and
would you
compare?
folks What would you folks like to do?
I think we should do it as a group because I probably wouldn't be the strongest teammate for the other person.
No,
Absolutely.
that's all good.
So I'm learning from you guys more.
That's
I will try and help.
that's totally cool. So Jamie, do you want me to start and then you can instruct me, because you are very good at thinking about things?
Yeah, sure. So we made a little like kind of space here down below. So if you see where it says 20 minutes, take an annotation tool. And we have this very rudimentary example here that we'll just pull it aside.
Yeah,
so,
I think for the for the folks who are here, it sounds like you guys are both sort of just starting your Figma journey, and it might be worthwhile going through this from scratch.
Yes.
Cool. Okay. I have I don't have my, do I have, let me just see if I have Keycaster quickly. I do have Keycaster. No.
Yeah.
No.
You introduced me to Keycaster. It's actually super useful.
Cool. So on the bottom left of my screen, you'll see the shortcuts that I'm using most of the time, but it sometimes doesn't. Like if I just do Shift, it doesn't tell you. So anyway, and I'm not as good with the shortcuts as Jamie, because Jamie's like crazy wizard. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to press T on to get to our text tool, and we're going to type out headline. We're going to make that way bigger with the same shortcuts as Adobe, Shift Command dot or comma, or the square, the triangle. What are those brackets called? You know the brackets, the triangle brackets. I'm going to choose a better font, and we're going to make, I'll drag to make another one. We're going to make that regular. Now, the first thing is these two pieces of text are going to be very different in their use case. So the headline is typically only going to be one line, or we hope it's only going to be one line. And the paragraph is the paragraph, which means it could be quite long. So it could be this text times 4. And so I'm going to take this and I'm just going to make sure that it is auto height. So auto width is what you would use for your headline. That's what we have here. Auto height, we're going to use for this object. And then we still have the width. We can still play with this width. So see, it's hiding the height because it's saying auto height. So the height is decided for you. The width you can play with. Now, I don't want the width to be, there's one particular object has to decide the width of the component. So you need at least one width that is predefined. So we're going to use the width of this object, the paragraph object, to define the width of everything else. So we're going to call this 768, and let's make it a reasonable text size, 16. Cool. And yeah, should probably use better lorem ipsum, hey, because otherwise, I quite like doing exits, because you know what happens with lorem ipsum sometimes is you put it in, and then because it sort of just doesn't look like anything out of the ordinary, you just sort of end up leaving it there, which can be a bit scary. So sometimes I just use X's. Like
I use a variant called Sagan Ipsum, which generates like very Carl Sagan-esque phrases. So often my placeholder paragraphs, when I use them, look very fantastical and inspirational.
Oh, that's magic. I like that. Is there one called Banana Epson?
There's so many.
There's like Cat Epson as well.
Yes,
Oh,
cat.
yeah, I love it.
Euphoria Lorem Ipsum. Oh, that's magic. Okay.
Yes.
Scratches that fleas, meow, underbelly rubs. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, well that's
Like
an
this.
easy. That's
It's
an
a
easy
winner.
one. All right. We'll use a medium. So when you're choosing fonts, just skip a. Yeah, if you have a fully fleshed out font where you've got like thin, extra light, light, regular, medium, semi bold, bold, extra bold, black, just skip a weight. Don't do light and regular. Do light and medium and bold, or semi bold, regular, extra light. Cool. We take these two. Shift select. Take those two. Press Shift A to create an auto layout. We add in a fill. Now I don't have any colors in my color palette, so I'm going to make a new color. I'm just going to make it a wonky far color. I'm going to adjust the horizontal padding to be 16. I'll make that 16 as well. I'll give it some corners. I try to do everything in fours, so 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. I think most people like that. Maybe we should make this in like a bold cartoony sort of a style. That'll call for more severe colors. So you'll see as my numbers go up, they're actually, if I press Shift up, they're going up in 8s, and you can change that by going to your preferences and then going to nudge amount. You can change your big nudge to 8. So when you press Shift up, it goes to 8, not 10.
I would say that's probably like one of the most important preferences, especially if you're working in like a 4 or 8 point grid system. It will save so much pain and time if you have your nudge to 8, because then if everything's on a 4 or 8, you can reliably just like nudge things around and nudge values.
Boy. I've actually done that already in mine, so
oh, well done.
One thing I've done.
That's awesome.
You're not such a beginner then, because that's like usually that's one of the first like level up moves that people make. Start learning like, oh, the measurement.
Thanks.
I have completely frozen.
Oh dear. Oh, you have. I think your Figma has frozen because I moved it around.
Yes, I see so. Okay, let me just restart Figma real quick.
I've never seen it do that before. Yeah. Demoitis, huh?
Yes, exactly.
That happened to me twice today, actually.
Wow,
so
really?
I wonder if in the Figma server, I don't know if it's an issue with it.
I blame Adobe. Okay, so we've got a headline, we've got text. What do we want to now? So, okay, wait, we need this to be a component. So we're going to make this a component with Option Command K.
For the people in the recording, Mitch, could you reshare your screen?
Sorry, have I not reshared my screen?
Your screen froze.
There we go.
Now it's back. Yes.
Yes. Okay. So you just do that again. So you have this frame now. It's called frame 13108, which is not a great name. So Option Command K goes to purple, makes it a component. Let's rename this to Annotation. Now, we're not going to just have one version of this. We're going to probably have at least 2 or 3. So I'll drag it out, detach it. That's quite important. So this is a current sort of, some people call it a bug, some people call it a feature, sort of a thing. But there is a difference in the hierarchy between copying this as a child and making a pure component copy. So when I say copy it as a child, I mean Alt drag it and it creates a child component. So that's the child and that's the parent, right? If I detach this and I make this a component, I now have two separate components that are that have nothing to do with each other, right? Now, if I were to make these into a variant set, and I select both of them and say combine as variants, I can change both of these independently and I can play with them as I like. But if I didn't do that, if this was a child and this was a parent, and I made this into a if I had two children that I made into a component set, so what I would need to do is I'd need to make two children, make each of them their own components, and now we have this componentception problem of we have annotation, and then within annotation we have another thing called annotation, and then you've got the headline and the scratch it please. That's actually kind of valuable because what it means is we can now make this a variant set, and we can change this, and it's going to change there, but we can also override this. But it means that we're not going to be able to add additional things to our layout here. We're not going to be able to, for example, add in this thing. We would have to detach the component. So the best way of doing this, let's go all the way back, is here, detach, copy it, separate components, combine as variants, and now they are on their own. Jamie, do you have what do you think? Do you think we should, that's the way to do it? Or?
I don't normally do it like that. I'm not saying it's wrong. What I typically do is I go to the main component, and I'll just make a copy actually, just for if we break anything. So this is, I've just detached and made it its own component because I want this to be kept safe. So let's just pretend this is where we started. I would go to the right-hand panel and click Properties and Add Variant. And then a little plus icon appears, and I click Add Variant. And now I have two, they're both variants, but I can independently change them. So let's say this one has a second headline, and maybe the padding is like a little different. Now, I don't generally like to do too much separation between variants unless there's a specific reason. So one case might be I want like one of these to be a light version and maybe one of them to be a dark version. So, and then, I can just swap between them. Now, these don't have any relation to each other. There is an advantage to doing it like the nested way, which is what Mitch showed. So where you basically take like a child that does have a relation and then start making a component set, because you can make style changes, but then of course if you change the master component or the main component, it does change them below. It quickly gets into kind of like advanced stuff with components when we go down that rabbit hole. So for now, I would say if you're still getting used to things, either take a detached copy and then make as many versions of that as you need, play around with them, and then select them all and then create use the combine variants or create a component set action on the top panel.
Yeah,
I think the more you play around with it, the more like you start to realize like what the pros and cons of both ways, or when you need a relationship between a top level component and the children, or whether they can be completely separate things. Because in theory, your variants can be completely different items that you can just swap between. Yes. Like icons are variants. So you might have an icon set and each variant is a different icon. That's a very useful example of when you need to differentiate.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think for this example, we'll probably be adding all sorts of stuff into the different variants, because my thinking is like maybe I want one of these variants to have a person associated with them. So my notes, my annotation may or may not have a person's name on it. That's the concern. So I've got a name here, and maybe make an avatar type. I don't know if you would do this in real life, to be honest, because it's a bit of a. Okay, I get confused between the Adobe and Figma shortcuts, but it's Option Command
and square bracket, right? Yeah.
So let's say we put that there. Maybe to save us an object, we give it a fixed size of 42 and 32. And we say it's fixed size, we say it's in the middle, we say it's in the center, and then we add a fill. That's not a fill, that's the
if you turn that text layer into an auto layout, you'll create basically a box with text in it.
Yes. And then I'm so used to having color. I'm so used to having defined colors. That's one nice thing. That's the amazing thing about the Figma color system is you can just, if you need something to be white, just say F, and it'll make it. And in fact, if you type in blue, it will just make it blue, which is kind of cool. Okay, so the only issue with the auto layout thing is now I need to physically move this stuff so that it's 40. Would it be 42, 48, 40? It would be 48. Because they only have
48 by 48.
Yeah. So we would make something like that, and we say center aligned, this is center aligned. And then we can take this and select that, make an auto layout, put it in the middle, give these all the radius.
And that's exactly what developers do as well when they want to make likes of a rounded button. They just set the border radius to 999 and it'll always be round at the edges.
Yeah. Make that a component so that if I need to change it, even if I only use it once, I don't have to go and fiddle inside this thing. I can just go and edit it here. I'm going to make this box.
There's actually something that we take for granted that I always forget that people learn is that, you know, we just placed that name component. We place an instance of that in another component. So you can, like, often what happens when you start building kind of this kind of component, which has several parts, is it can be a component as within a set of components, and each part can be configurable. So for example, we have name now as a component. We can edit that, and that will then edit all the instances. And that becomes really powerful when you have basically content blocks, which might have multiple components in a container. That's when things start getting very powerful and automated. You've one source that you can define everything by.
Yes. Jamie, I'm going to let you, I think maybe we can all have a go adding a thing to this. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated.
Will I
think?
Take a stab at it?
Take a stab.
So I think I would like to see maybe an icon in here. So we don't currently have icons in this file. However, I
have some icons.
Oh, do you have icons?
I have icons. Yes, I have icons.
Great. So grab us a random icon there. Maybe something informational, or kind of maybe a status, or actually just go for anything.
Okay. I'll go for, how many icons do you want? Do you want 3 icons?
Take a pick.
Okay, I'm going to give you 5 super random icons.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm pasting these in. These are children. I need to detach these children.
Yes.
And then I need to go to the top and I need to say create multiple components. And then I'm going to
tidy
them. No, I need to.
No, you got it. So you need to change the spacing.
Yes. So select to tidy. No, I need to select to. There's only 5 of them, so I can just distribute. There you go.
There you go. So right now, these are all components. I'm going to actually, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to detach them and make them a variant set. The main reason I'm going to do that is because I want to have the configurability where I may want this one of these icons to switch to another icon without doing a full component swap. So I have a plugin I use personally. Now you're not seeing my screen, but I have a plugin I use called Detach Component, and you can find.
Do you want to share?
Yeah. Okay. Let me hop over to my screen. So how you can find this is you can either go into your plugins menu at the top of your screen for both Windows and Mac, or now what you can do these days is you can quickly press Shift-I or click this little 3 squares and a plus, which is sort of the assets button. Actually, what do they call that button? Resources. That's probably a better word for it. And then search for a plugin called Detach Component. And if I may have to have things selected for that to work. Oh, there we go. So that automatically detaches components that I've selected. Dangerous, but when you know what you're doing, very useful.
How is that different to right-click detach component?
It might be that they fixed this, but it used to be the case where you couldn't detach multiple components or it would get upset. So I can't see detach when I select multiple. I can do it on an individual basis. So you can usually select a single component and, where is the detach? You can't just detach a master component normally. So what you have to do is you have to take an instance and detach it. So what this basically does is it just skips that step. Normally, it's not a good idea, by the way, to just randomly detach components, especially if they're being used. That can be disastrous. But in this case, they're not linked to anything. We just want to repurpose them. So when I run that plugin, it does that job for me. It just automates that step. And what I want to do is I want to take these 5 selections and I'm going to go to my little components icon on the top and click the arrow and say create component set. And what it's doing is it's turning all these into a variant of a new component. So I'll call this one icons. And the variants are just named after the components that they used to be.
Yeah, they were well named in the file. So
yes. Now, typically, if this was just me working away, I'd already have a library of icons that I could just pull from. But let's say in this case, things are more sketchy. I'm still figuring things out. This will suit me for now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an instance by Alt dragging or Option dragging one of those icons, and I think I'm going to place it in. I want to have it beside the text on the left. Now, when I try to drag it in, it wants to be in this vertical layout. So what I do to combat that is I think in my head, okay, how do I want this to look? So I want the text and the icon to be in a row, but I want everything overall to still be in a column. So I'll select the things I want to be in a row, and I'll press Shift-A to create another auto layout within it. And then I can select the horizontal direction. And I can also middle align that. So now these 2 folks are in a horizontal layout, but they're sitting in a vertical layout. Usually when you have multiple layers of auto layouts, you can also see subtly by the icon that it uses on the left-hand panel, whether it's a vertical auto layout or horizontal, or sorry, whether it's a row or a column. So you can see the 3 squares are sitting in a row. That's how you can tell if you have like lots and lots of layers going on. So for example, you see some of these icons have the items sitting in a stack. The only other thing here is I want this icon to be a little bit bigger. So what I'll do is I'll go back to this component, and I want to change the size of all of these at the same time. So you can do this various ways, but a really fast way to do this is press the K key, and then a new scale menu pops up. And I'll say I want these 1.5 times the size. And that scales everything within whatever you selected by either you can manually do it by dragging the corner, or you can just do it by a multiple or by one of the width or height constraints. So that's just a really fast way to kind of bring everything up a notch.
And if we were to change I'm like 75% sure of this, but if we were to change the size of the icon in your annotation components, which is now a child of what we have above, and then you swap out, will that size, I think that size should maintain, right? So
yes.
So
Figma always has kind of a policy that works usually 90% of the time, and sometimes it works against you, where it will want to preserve any style overrides that you've made. So it will apply to size. It will also apply to stroke and fill color. The challenge is sometimes if you're swapping from an icon that's using one type, like a fill or a stroke, to an icon that uses a mixed fill stroke, sometimes you'll get like a quirk where it doesn't know exactly what to assign it to. But generally speaking, if let's say I want to scale this up to 48. So I've scaled that up. You can see the icon at the source is still the same size. I'm also going to change this color. I have a primary 600. I wouldn't typically use a yellow icon like this, but hey, let's go with it. Now, if I go to this drop down, because these are variants, and I set this to cog, you'll see it's retaining the size, retaining the color. Basically, any style level overrides I've made, it'll hold on to. And what I might actually do is I might just change that to blue. So you can see now that I've only done this in one instance. I could do this in the other instance, but it's not necessary. So this way you can start to create like, different configurations of a component. Maybe it's a case where this could be like some kind of notice. This could be a comment with a name attribution. Maybe you want one with nothing. There is another trick. I won't go over it much now. I'll just kind of show you as a way for you to find out yourself and play around with it. If you have a component where you're going to have a case where you've got one variant without a name attribution or a name field, and one with, so for example, this author title or this stakeholder title, you can also configure your instance to have this toggleable, so you can have this hidden as a toggle. Now, you want to be careful with this to have the right intent. So if you do go down this route of setting things to appear or disappear through toggles, you maybe don't want to have two versions of this as well. So it's just a different style of doing it. But if I were to go to my right-hand panel, and where it says layer, there's like a little, it looks like a I don't know, like a matchstick jumping into a diamond. There's an option here called create Boolean property. So if I click that, I get to create a new property, but this property actually has to do with making something appear or disappear. So it's already come up with a suggestion because that component's called name. So it says show name is true. If I select true, by default, that will always show the name. So when you create this property, you won't really see anything happen except this cute little purple label. But in an instance of that component, you can see there's a toggle. Now I better just quickly get rid of that. So it's giving me an angry conflicting values, only because the names of these were the same. So we go back and that's fixed. Now I have a toggle saying show name, and if I click that, it doesn't show it. That's really powerful. And if you look at go back to Mitch's component, briefly, I'll scroll to it on my screen. Oh,
I've detached it. Sorry, yeah, I detached it, but
you must pull out a copy.
Yes,
Mitch has really like taken the Boolean toggles to like the next level, which is basically having a toggle for like each direction, and you can combine them so that up and left switch on becomes up left.
Yeah.
So where
let me go get that quickly.
Yes,
but so I try to work, like we all know click counting isn't really a thing, but when you have something like this, it does really matter whether you're using a drop down or a Boolean switch. So I quite like, let me find you. Where are you, Jamie? Here you are.
I'm here. I can follow you.
Yeah, so this is my notes component in full with all the different types of things. And you can see each one, I've got each variant has lots of no's and one yes. So if you click on, Jamie, just click on that like text contents one within the component itself, and not the down on the component. Yeah.
Yes.
So this was before they actually created those Boolean instance things. This was created about a year ago. And it was just yes or no. So if you type the word no or the word yes, or on or off also works, then you're going to get this lovely little switch instead of the drop down, which is much easier than clicking on a drop down and then clicking on the thing. And I know it sounds like pretty trivial, but it makes a difference when you're doing this 100 times a day.
Yes, it actually is very powerful. For example, if you have an icon set and you have maybe like there's different weights of the icon, or there's like a kind of a half filled one and a filled one. If you can configure that as Booleans, you can have like a switch for each type instead of having to use individual icons. And you can really see that Mitch has gone to quite a bit of extra effort here with the arrow. So we can see in this case, he set Booleans for the direction, but he's done it in such a way that when you have two selections combined, it basically follows that option. So you can have right and down, or up and left, or just one of them. So you get eight options from 4 selections, and all like visible. So you don't need to select a drop down to know. Yeah, there it is.
And that's controlled by this object, which uses exactly the same trick. So if you look on one of these, it's basically, is this an up arrow? Yes, no. Is this a left arrow? Yes, no. It's very dumb, but it's really useful.
And I think true and false also works, because I remember like that before Figma got smart, you actually had to manually write in the layer name, which give you the option. It was fairly hacky.
Yeah, you had to like, and it still has that on the. If you look on the left hand side, it sort of creates these very janky looking names. So you used to have to do it there, but now you can just do it on the right hand panel. It's much easier.
It's like you suddenly get all these options opened up to you, which gives you a very powerful, like unique set of components and variants, which can build like kind of any sort of annotation system that you come up with. I think it's really powerful.
I appreciate it. So Megan, do you feel like coming and playing and adding a thing to our components on the side here? Don't have to. Totally up to you.
I'm just trying to actually think of what to add to it. That's the main thing. Maybe maybe I'll just watch for this one, and then
Yeah, that's
if I
okay.
think of
Totally cool. Totally cool. Renan, do you feel like adding something? What do you think we could also use on this?
I would say maybe a divider between the title and the paragraph.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
that sounds good.
Have you worked with auto layouts before?
Mm-hmm.
Have
Yeah.
you worked? Okay, cool.
Should I add the
Go
Go for
right
it.
ahead.
Go for it.
So you've got your line.
Yeah, sorry, I just made it as at the moment it's a frame. I converted it into a auto layout, and then I set the vertical resizing to 1.
Cool.
The
Oh,
height.
really?
And then you can also add border radius if you want, just to have a little bit of smoothness on this side. So I would say maybe 4. And I just drag into there. And you can then fill the container, and then you take the size of it, and you can move up and down, I guess.
Yeah, good.
Why did you use a frame in that case? I'm curious. I don't normally see a frame being used. Actually, it was a yes.
I always try to use frame instead of using shapes, because if you use frames, you can also always make use of auto layout. So if I use a rectangle or a ellipse or any of the shapes, you can't really do that.
Have you used the line feature before?
Yeah, you can use that too, but I wonder if you, well, I guess you can, I don't know if you can turn that into an auto layout, but I don't know if you really need to, add an auto layout to that. But I guess it's just for, yeah, I try to avoid. So even if I'm creating like an avatar or anything like that, I always go for a frame first. Because you can also add grids to frames, where you cannot add grids to shapes, if you know what I mean.
That's a really good point, and that is one of the big advantages of frames. And it's one of those things that does sometimes drive me crazy, that you can't typically add layout grids to certain elements. But then if you use frames, you have that option. But yeah, that's exactly it. Like that's a really nice and simple feature to add. And you see what I mean? Like you can just like keep building on this. Once it's within the auto layout structure, it becomes almost like a Lego set where you can just add these modular pieces as you go along.
So should we take everything and combine it into one component, and then use your Boolean thing as the last thing?
Yes.
Okay.
I think cool. Maybe there could be one that has a list option as well, that I was thinking.
Oh yeah?
That could be cool.
I don't know. I just think
okay.
But that's what I was wondering. Would you make, like, instead of adding like he did, like, did you combine them all there?
Well, I've just deleted the other ones, but
okay.
To make a list, I guess you could, so there is a built-in list tool on the paragraph, so you can decide whether something is a list or not.
I tried, but I noticed if you do a dash, it'll automatically make it as a bullet point, right? Unless you change it.
Oh, sorry. So you can make a bullet point with option 8, and that will automatically make a well-formatted list, the kind of thing where if you go over the line, it's going to keep your indentation, and you can keep on bullet pointing like that.
Oh, cool.
If that's what you're looking for. But if you're looking for something with much more control, like you want an icon in each item and stuff like that, yeah, you'd probably have to make it a separate thing. But if that's all you need, then you can do that within the paragraph itself.
Cool.
And if you did want like a more bespoke list, like with, let's say, maybe there's an icon for each one. Typically, the best way to do that is, let's say we have a list where we have an icon, and maybe we make this just a little smaller, maybe like 16 pixels, put in some text. We'll auto layout that with Shift A, and we'll call this list item. If I let me think.
You're going to need to do list item 1, list item 2, list item 3, list item 4.
Well, the best way, I think there's 2 ways to do this, right? So because this is a component and this is not just a bullet point, if you put this in here, then each one of these is a component. So you have to like how some people handle that like my annotation kit component that I use. Well, not mine, but the one I use so much is they have like an option for 1 section, 2 sections, 3 sections. There is a kind of a smoother way of handling that, which is if you're more comfortable with separating your components into their own little pieces, what you can do is you can take a bunch of list items. Let's just put this into an auto layout. And we'll say maybe that's a list of 5 for now. We make this component called list. So I just turned this list into a component. And then you can put this in here. So if we need to add, like if we have a total number of items we need to add, we can keep duplicating this. Maybe it's a max of 10 items or something like that. And then when we take an instance of this component, obviously we can't just add things to this because this is listening to this component. But what we can do is we can hide the ones we don't need. So if we select these items and then either go to the layer panel on the right-hand side and click the I, or we do Control-Shift-H, we can hide the ones we don't need. And that way you can have a custom list.
You can also just press delete, hey? So on this,
of course, yeah.
Yeah, so on the subject.
Yeah.
Just press delete and then it doesn't actually delete it, it just hides it.
Yes, because instances won't delete things because basically this instance says, okay, I need to have the same as what's in this main component. So you want to get rid of that, but also I can't just delete it, so I'm going to hide it. So the default action for deleting an instance is to hide it. And you can see that by the layers panel.
But I feel like if we did list item 1 through 10 as those instance as the Boolean properties, that could also work, right? So if you had this list and then you said so this is, I'm just going to call it like li and then the number, so like li1 true. Let me do this on 3 just to make sure that this will work.
Actually, Mitch, I'm going to let you share there so people can see, because this specific kind of thing you're doing here. I didn't get this the first time. It's a new-ish feature in Figma, right?
Yeah, so apply Boolean property.
So there's a like icon there again, yes.
Yeah, create components. I've already done 2 and 3, li3. Next one, boom, create component, li4. And let's just do 5. That's all we need. li5. And then and this is a world in which no one ever has a list of more than 5 things. Which sounds, let me reset this. Let me reset all the changes on this so that I have a fresh one to work with. And then I don't want this because that was just me messing around.
Yes.
Cool. And then I have this list where I can go, how many list items do I want? I just want those 3, which is about the same as just deleting them. The only issue is now that the difference is now we have a default. So we can say by default, these 3 are not going, these 4 are not going to be visible, and you're just going to see the first one. So this one, we are going to
set your Boolean to false, maybe.
On the original.
Yes.
And do I have to do that for each one? No.
I think.
Yeah.
You can configure it there. So if you like click the little, yes.
Oh, that's a bit of a workaround, isn't it?
There's always more than one way to do this. So this is just one approach. And when you start doing this, you find the one that you like.
Yeah.
Also, if you're working with other people, it's a good idea for you to agree on like a method.
Yeah, because you're going to need, the thing is, if you've just got this object and then you've got all of this hidden stuff in it, and someone comes to your file, they're going to go, what? What do I do? I don't understand. So all in all, yeah, I definitely go for the paragraph option first. Maybe the list option with components, but honestly, what I've found with these components, with the components that I built, is I end up cheating a little bit. And sometimes you do just have to, for the sake of time, just break the mold a bit, either break the component, or I've set up my component to just be able to stretch from the corner, so that if I need to, for example, just throw an entire layout in the middle of this thing, it's not going to be a problem. Which is a very rough way of doing things, but sorry, I have a new keyboard and half of the keys are in a different place, and that's my excuse. What's bring to front? Option, command, front. I don't know why that was so hard for me. There you go. Yeah, so something like that. I mean, yeah, you don't necessarily need everything all the time. Like, unless you're doing 100 of these things where there's specific bulleted lists that each need their own icon.
Yeah, like sometimes you just need a little bit of extra flexibility, or sometimes you'll need a one-off, and it's okay in those cases to detach that component, as long as you're just aware that that thing no longer updates, and you're building up a little debt, but just a little is okay. Especially if it's a disposable review, for example, or something that you're not intending to keep and for it to be used like for months and years to come.
Absolutely.
That's a cute little annotation, actually. I did a tweak just to make it hug the content, so you can resize it horizontally.
Oh, that's very nice.
Just like cool. A little extra. And again, like that's you as you build these things, you just make little tweaks as you go along, make it work for different cases. That's really cute, actually. I really like that. I like the chunky borders.
Yeah. Okay. So let's in the last. Sorry, Megan, did you want to say something, or Renan?
No, I was just agreeing. I think it's really cute. It's really nice.
I agree as well, Rick.
So we have 10 minutes left. So if you come join me down on the section called dog food testing, it says 15. I think let's make this 10, just for the time being, so we can test it out. Let's copy this and play with it and see what we run into. Maybe we discover something about our component that we need. Yeah.
And of course, the nice thing is now that it is a component, you don't always have to go to the source to grab it. You can either go to the assets panel on the top left, and in local components, you'll see all those components that we made earlier, including the one that we're using. Or Shift-I is another really fast one to quickly pull it up if you know the name of it, or you just jump to local components. And when you have lots of components going, like you're either going to be using assets or Shift-I. There's no way around it, especially if it's not in the same file.
Oh, you can't see my screen anymore, can you?
No. Do you want me to share?
I thought that you were going to share again, but it's fine.
I wasn't sure.
I can share. So if I'm being very judgy about this border, and I say very mid 2000s border vibe, couple problems already. I had to like if you're just looking for what I did with my notes, just very small pieces. I don't need a full headline and then a full paragraph. It might actually be worthwhile not having a headline and a whole paragraph and just having a single text object, possibly. We also don't have a definition of, is this a developer problem? Is this a copywriter problem? Is this a decision that needs to be made? So maybe that's something that the icon can do. I do like this. I would probably put this as its own sort of drop-down list if I'm working with 5 people. So if it's Chris or Mitch or whoever, Chicken Banana, they can say this is the person that wrote this. There's no way to automate that. That would be very cool if there was a way to automate that. Or if there was, hopefully they'll find a way to make a more permanent version of comments, because comments has that built in. If I say something, it's going to tell you that Mitch said this. But yeah, this bike one is absolutely magic. I might actually share this with you in real life quickly, just to show you the wonders of this incredibly treacherous site. Like, can't read this text. At the background, the blur on the thing. Jamie, you brought this to my attention. What's your favorite piece?
Well, I wrote a whole article about this page because I love it so much. I think I titled the article "A Rogue Spoke." I was very proud of myself for that one. It deserves some kind of journalism award. My favorite thing about this site, well, apart from when you sign up for it, like the process starts okay and it starts to derail, is the login. The login is definitely by far my favorite thing about the site. So when you log into this page, you have to you enter your regular details, but then you have to enter your PIN. But how you enter that PIN it's one of the most unusual ways I've ever seen anyone needing to input a password thing.
How does one log in?
It's actually well, it's there, but it's also hiding in the image at the top. You can't really see it very well.
I see.
Yes. So there it is, hiding behind the wheel. So yeah, so your email is fine. And you think, oh, I can just enter my PIN in that text looking field that's exactly the same as the email, except that's not a text field, that's a label, and that's got a disabled cursor. So you're definitely not allowed. That's actually the worst thing. It is a field. You're just not allowed to enter anything except these random buttons. And if you log in incorrectly, it does the most Mission Impossible thing.
Oh, that's magic.
Shuffles all the numbers just to really hurt your brain.
I don't know what I mean.
As if Dublin Bikes is an ultra high security interface. So
yeah,
people are watching over your shoulder while you're just logging in once in a blue moon to update your subscription.
Yeah. Okay, so so if we were to say, well, okay, so that's certainly not the biggest. That's for the other one. I mean, that one, the problem's pale in comparison. So let's say this one is a good example of headline, and then this could be a really nice way of saying, here's the problem, here's the solution, here's my so step one, put this in the header. Step two, use colors that contrast. And then instead of a thing, maybe something with a tick. We don't have that icon, but yes, you'd probably put this is what you would do.
Oh yes, you see, there's the benefit of having a little icon there. You could have like different designations. Maybe there could be teams or categories.
And depending on how tight your leash is on your developers, you could even get your developers to play along with this and maybe ask them to change. You could almost treat it like a kind of like a Kanban sort of thing, where it's like to do, doing, done. So you could have a component that was like, this is to do, and then they personally, when they've done it, they change it to done. Although they probably won't do that realistically. These shadows, if we were to, so if we're trying to annotate something that's animated, that can be a bit tricky. I might do like a screenshot and sort of drop it in here and say, here's the animation. But you can also do video. So if I've got, a piece of video, then I can drop that video into Figma and you can play it in a prototype.
You might, and then in the annotation, you might just have something like, press play to view what I mean. And that's actually extremely useful for when you need to highlight a specific animation or flow, and you want to draw attention to it, but you still want to use Figma because it's nice to have everything in one source. I've actually used that a few times for GIFs specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I've ever used GIFs seriously in Figma other than in loaders. Like lots of memes just send people GIFs, for fun. But I think loaders are probably the only time I've used GIFs properly. That's probably a really good one for a whole session as well.
Yeah.
How do we do animation in Figma? What can you actually get away with? Because there's some amazing guys. If you go on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, you'll find guys who do incredible stuff with the animations.
Well, Renan, did you mention Memorizely?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Xander is a bit of a wizard when it comes to animations, right?
He loves that. It's really good.
Fast.
Super fast.
So the last one, Mobbin. But you're talking about Subway. You're not talking about Mobbin, right? Because Mobbin is where
that's where I got the screens. I figured I'd give them the source. I haven't been trolling through apps. Thankfully, there's wonderful people at Mobbin who do that for you.
Yeah, if you haven't been to Mobbin, I would highly recommend go there. It's basically a collection of all the iOS apps and screenshots from every single part of them. So it's incredible to see sort of, like you go on Behance and you see these things and they're just, a lot of them, they're beautiful, but they're just not realistic. This is real in the wild, proper UI that has been approved and that is out there, good or bad. So it's a great place to go. Cool. Last one. What made you choose Subway?
Oh, I just saw the first thing that looked maybe not perfect. Because I didn't want to just put in like beautiful screens. This is not terrible. It's a bit clunky. So I figured, oh great, this is totally something I'd annotate and want to fix. I saw this lovely 8 to 20 characters, uppercase, lowercase number symbol. All for a sub, really?
for a sub.
You've lost me.
I don't think my bank even wants that, has that many rules. There's obviously some stuff here where they've taken they're taking components from libraries and they're not really using them properly, or they're being asked to do weird ad hoc things like change the size of the labels here, and they're not working on the line spacing. They're not adjusting the padding based on the new font size and that kind of thing. This is a little wonky. Should be sort of center aligned. I don't know. What does everyone else think?
The paddings as well on the right, on the terms and condition, it's just really off.
Oh
below.
yes, it sort of just goes off into the distance there. That's funny. Yeah, that's good. It's not the worst, but I mean, if that's 0, it doesn't really look like 0. So yeah.
The button for view participating locations is hard to read as well.
Oh, good
Very
luck.
squished.
It looks like Montserrat. I mean, it's all very tight, and it's more of a display kind of typeface than kind of a CTA. Really, it's really weird.
Yeah, it does look like
Readability is not great in that.
yeah, they also have a bit of a hierarchy issue where rewards and deals, and then buy one, it's like those are the same thing. Oh, that's yeah, you see. It's lovely. Awesome.
Oh, this is where you see your annotations can start getting snipey and passive aggressive.
Yeah. You gotta it's like when you write an email, you write it in passion, but then you just put it in drafts and then come back an hour later and see if you still feel like doing all the things that you said you would do in your first version. Cool, guys, we're on time, so we really didn't think we would even take up an hour and a half, but you guys made it really fun, and we really appreciate you coming. And we'd love to have you back and work with you on what you're keen on. So Megan and Renan, Megan, maybe you want to go first. Is there something you would like to see us do in the future?
I wouldn't give any advice yet, because this is my first one. I really, really enjoyed this. Honestly, I learned a lot, and it was really easy to follow along. So just thank you for that. I loved learning all the shortcuts as well. You're amazing at that. I wrote down so many. So you could do a quick fire shortcut thing, but yeah, one day. But yeah, I loved it. Thank you very much.
That's cool. Jamie and I can have a shortcut off, and he will win.
I am a shortcut guy. Yeah. So many as well. There's some really crazy ones in Figma.
There's my favorite one, and because they do steal quite a bit from Adobe, although they are now part of Adobe, so it's not stealing anymore. I think if you press Shift Option Command K, no, it doesn't work anymore. But if you go to Preferences and then Keyboard Shortcuts. Oh, sorry, Help and then Keyboard Shortcuts. There is actually.
Oh, wow. Is this new?
No, it's quite. Shame. I'm sorry about your video.
I'm sorry. I thought maybe it stopped. I will update my drivers. Hopefully,
that's fine. Last thing very quickly is if you go to keyboard shortcuts in Help, so Help keyboard shortcuts, it's actually a little mini game. So what it shows you is the ones in blue here are the ones that you have used, whereas the ones that are not highlighted are ones you've never used before. So
That's awesome.
so if you use one of them, it goes blue, and it shows you what you do and don't use, which is really interesting. So it's like, use each one at least once. You see, I don't do the text align stuff, but I do use obviously like bold, underline, because those are all easy. So yeah, good fun. So I'll leave you guys with that. Renan, anything that you want to see in the future? We're on the Slack and on the Discord as well, if you want to join us there.
Yeah, I joined you guys on Slack, I think last week.
Yes.
I think animation is kind of cool. It's something that with Smart Anime makes really easy, but it's nice to see like how we can create, different animations. Even if I think there's a whole Twitter thread going on this week about animating on Figma, and people are going crazy having like buttons with colors coming like from the border, or it's really like getting very crazy stuff, but it's kind of fun.
Awesome. Yeah. And as with everything, like as soon as you get into plugins, it just exponentially gets crazier. But maybe we can do a basic sort of what's on the shelf, what comes out of the box with Figma, and then dive into some of the more crazy stuff. That sounds fun, hey Jamie?
Yeah, animations is actually something I could probably get even better at. I know there's some really fantastic springy motions and custom easing that you can use. It's very powerful.
Awesome. Okay. Well, it sounds like we have a thing to do next month. Although our next one will probably be someone's going to come talk to us about my boss is going to come talk to us about how to adjust your portfolio, how she looks at portfolios and picks portfolios. So that could be quite fun. And then we'll try and do one at least once a month this year. But yes. Yeah, that's it. I appreciate you guys coming.
Sounds great. Thank you for this. Really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Please take care of yourselves. Have a great night.
You too.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thanks for coming,
folks.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.